Ladies and gentlemen, hello. It's been so long. I miss you all. I am Pope, and it is 12 fucking 10 in the morning. It is our guys, look, I got a new watch. Look at my new watch. Isn't it fucking cool?
Very
All right.
nice.
Anyway, so it's 12:10. And of course, I'm here hanging out with original Nick and Beth, the Macabre Pimpstress, and we're here for another episode of Macabre Masters, which, by the way, we might actually have a new name for soon if it goes through all the approval and the paperwork and the red tape. You guys know how it is. There's got a chain of command we got to deal with, okay? But I just found out earlier that the big boss, all right, has given the approval on the new name that we're talking about, so we should be good. I am not referring to Satan. That is actually next up on the chain, but we're good to go there. So, guys, today we're talking about Pan's Labyrinth. But before we get into that, how you doing?
Extremely tired, but really happy to be here, honestly. Great to make a sacrifice for the listeners.
We do it all for the listeners, really.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's like if Jesus came down to earth and he said, "Okay, look, you can have one of the stigmatas or you can get up really fucking late to record your podcast. It's one or the other." Christ right now is looking down on us and he's like, "Guys, I don't even know if I do that. Like, fucking, I'll die on the cross, but get up to record a podcast? I'm
Jesus.
not sure. I am
To
not
be clear,
fucking
that's
sure."
how I do it. Like on the days where I have no motivation, that's literally what I tell myself. Like, you could have the stigmata right now. You should just do the podcast. Get up, bitch. Like, grab your microphone, put your big girl panties on.
And speak into a microphone.
Speak to a
Yeah,
for
right.
people who really like.
I hate that phrase so much.
What phrase?
It's a long story. Speak into the mic.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not a fan.
You guys are lucky that you got me in this phase of my life. I'm much more mature now. When I was younger, like stigmata talking about it, not the movie, but the actual act of having a stigmata, including Jesus himself, was always accompanied by at least one masturbation joke. But I refrained.
What the?
I refrained. Jesus was a virgin, man. I mean, Jesus Christ. Anyway, come on, work with me. Nick, guys, you got to remember, Nick is a sweet summer child. Right?
We are corrupting him with every minute of every recording.
He is a sweet summer child. So, yeah. Sometimes I forget that. But that's okay. So, with that said, today the subject is, of course, Pan's Labyrinth. Now, for those of you who don't know, Pan's Labyrinth is a movie, a Spanish movie directed by Guillermo del Toro. It is a fantasy movie. It is a dark fantasy movie that explores a lot of different themes, but it kind of runs along almost an Alice in Wonderland kind of track. You got a lonely girl who she's in the case of this movie, she's it's during like the Spanish Civil War, like right after, like I think it's like at the tail end of the Spanish Civil War, or did it take place in World War II? I'm not sure. I don't know.
I believe it was World War II.
It always is. Well, because
Yeah,
it
I
was
think
this.
so. It was one of the World Wars. I'm trying to remember just based off of the uniforms. I think it was World War II, but I don't remember seeing specifically like
Anything
Nazi
about it.
regalia,
That's
and
what I think it was listed
right.
around there.
So
well,
I think it was actually World War One.
I think, yeah, I think it was the Great War, because what happened was when they were in the cave and they were talking about the Americans, they were talking about, I think that they just landed at Normandy, right?
Yeah, that's World War II. Yeah.
So or was it Gallipoli? No.
Let me just IMDb it
Well, it
real
says
quick, and we'll find
1944.
out.
So
That would be World War
1944.
II. Yeah,
That's World War II. Yeah. Shit, I need to get up on my World War history. I'm kind of sucking at that.
There's a crash course for that.
Hell yeah. So they basically, what's happening is the Spanish government is basically trying to stomp out the last of a rebellion against the government, and they send out this dude. He's known as the Wolf to kind of take them down. It's this girl's father by marriage, or And but what happens is that he's a real bad human. He's a real bad person. And so she basically runs into a fairy. She reads a lot of books and believes in fairy tales and believes in fairies. She runs into a fairy. They take her down to a labyrinth. She meets a faun. He gives her a mission. She goes on a hero's journey, and then a bunch of stuff happens. And so, what it comes down to is that it was a lot of commentary by Guillermo del Toro on not only war, but actually, interestingly, on Catholicism, which even knowing that, I couldn't find the context in the movie, even knowing that. And so, it's a beautiful movie, is universally loved, and there was a novelization made of it, which went more in detail that I actually liked more than the movie. Although I will say that the visuals for the movie are absolutely fucking haunting. Like everybody thinks about the pale guy, Mitch McConnell with his fucking eyes, like this. That's really cool. He looks at guys, put a picture of Mitch McConnell next to the pale dude and tell me it's not the same fucking guy. Okay? Tell me. It is. It
Even in
is.
2006, really. Although I think he looks more like a turtle.
He kind of does. He kind of looks like the master of disguise a little bit. I'm not turtly enough for the turtle club. Um
Toidle, toidle.
turtle. Yeah, exactly. So but the faun himself, like when I got a good look at him on my second watch through, the faun himself is just like he's the way he's constructed, and most of the effects were
Yeah,
practical too. He was just so beautifully made, and his like mannerisms and stuff for being, and all that makeup and stuff, his mannerisms and kind of how he talks with his hands and kind of all that stuff, and he's all creaky and shit because he's been, sitting there for so long or whatever. Like it's beautiful, guys.
yeah,
If you've never seen Pan's Labyrinth, stop listening to this, put it on pause,
Right
and go
now.
actually
yeah, yeah,
watch
yeah.
it.
Pause it.
'Cause most of the movies, like, I feel like you can listen to the podcast and get a good idea of it. There's no way for us to get across the sheer
Ever.
beauty of this movie
Yeah,
and the
It's like
sheer
trying to explain a
brutality.
sunset on the ocean
yes,
over the
I was
mountains
literally
to
thinking
somebody.
about. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, no, you're good. Go ahead.
No, I was literally thinking that is the perfect word to describe whatever his name was. Hold on, I had his name. Vidal. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. That
El
was
Capitan?
yeah, that was the perfect word to describe him, was brutal. That's my favorite. It sounds bad, but that's like a very great introductory scene is where he beats someone's face in with a bottle just because they're out there hunting rabbits, and he
And
just
like
killed
beats
them.
it in, like
Yeah,
Beats
in.
it
yeah.
There was
in,
not like,
yeah.
let me just punch you in the face. He's
It's
like,
like
no, let me
my
like break
boy.
your nose into your brain.
He
He was
literally
great.
caves
Doug
that dude's face
Jones.
in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's another thing too about this that I thought was really special was that like most movies that are oriented around the idea of childhood, um finding magical worlds and stuff like that, those are always kids movies, right? And so the Guillermo del Toro, like he didn't flinch. Like it's really a brutal fucking movie. There's a lot of very brutal violence. There's some stuff they flinch away from that I think is fair. Like for example, they didn't have the full torture scene of that one soldier on there. It kind of showed after. I will
Yeah,
also say the novelization was a youth novelization, and even that went into full descriptions. The only thing they changed, and I thought this was a really brave move on their part, the only thing they changed is they took the word fuck out. So, in the part where the dude's
mm,
like, haven't you thought that your child might be a son? And then the wolf says, don't fuck with me. Instead, in the book,
yeah,
he says, get out of my sight. Right. But
yeah. That's a yeah.
aside from that, they kept everything else. And, so Captain Crunch is a total fucking asshole. And I don't know, man. One thing about the movie that I liked and didn't like at the same time. Well, I guess we should give like kind of the plot, the basic plot. I kind of started and then stopped. Nick, you wanna
Sorry,
you wanna
I
give the
skipped.
plot,
Yeah.
or Beth, you wanna give the plot, like kind of just like the sequence of events? Go watch it if you haven't seen it yet, and then come back.
So, where did you leave off? You left off, like, where the mother and daughter go to live with the
The
father,
very
right? Like,
beginning.
at the very
Yeah.
beginning. So, the little girl is basically, she is, like, right on the edge of puberty, right? So her mother's, like, telling her she needs to grow up, she needs to stop believing in fairy tales. The mother already knows that her new husband's kind of a dick, right? Because he doesn't treat her daughter very well. And the girl fantasizes about being, like, something special, like all little girls wanna grow up and be a princess, right? Like, it's a normal thing. Well, so she starts seeing like these magic things kind of happening around her. She meets, like he said, the fawn, and he kind of gives her these magic tools and tells her how to find these different magic things to happen to her to help her mother get better because her and the baby that she's pregnant with are sick. Um, and she takes the mandrake root, right, and puts it under the bed, which is an old wives' tale for healthy pregnancy. That's actually, some of that was actually based in real lore, folklore and folk medicine and stuff. And like the milk with the root under the bed specifically. So those there are actual spells you can trace back that are like that. And she sees that her mother is there and she's just really trying to be a good daughter, and he ends up trying to pull her away. She ends up going and seeing the fawn, who tells her that she has to go on this like little mission where she crawls into the chalk door that opens, right? She draws a door in chalk and then goes into it, and that's where she goes through the little tunnel to get to the guy with the hands and the eyeballs. And she's supposed to, what, it's not eat any of the fruit at the table, right? Like there's this giant feast out laid in front of him, and all the fairies are sitting there like trying to help her on her mission to grab what she's supposed to grab. I can't ever remember what she's supposed to grab.
She was grabbing a
um
dagger.
that's what it was, right? Thank you. And she's not supposed to touch any of this giant, huge, like beautiful feast at the table. And as she reaches for it, the fairies are trying to pull her back. And this is probably one of my favorite scenes because it is so intricately done. The way the fairies look and their faces, and like they're not just like haphazard. Like these fairies aren't necessarily pretty, but they are, and they are very intent on helping her not fail her mission. And she does. And then the guy is like all chasing after her, and she ends up hurting one of the fairies, right? Or something like that. Yeah.
Uh,
So, well, she
no,
The
he
two
go
of
ahead.
them get
he
eaten.
eats the fairy. He
He
eats
eats the
two of the fairies.
That's right, that's
They're
right.
three sisters,
So
and he eats two of them.
she has to go back to the fawn and tell her like what's happened, and the fairy like all whispers in his ear and snitches on her, and he's like, "What?" and freaks out, you know. And at the same time, like outside of her fairy world and outside of what's going on with her mom, we have the like maid of the house, the nursemaid, or not really the nursemaid, but like the servant woman of the house, who is also working for the local rebels and helping them to get medicine and food and stuff like that underneath the Captain Crunch's nose, right? So there's all this suspicion about like what's going on, how are all of these things kind of happening, who's to blame, who has all this inside information. Obviously his wife and daughter are the first people to come back, you know, to his that he hasn't already had with him. So they're already kind of under suspicion, just under the guise of guys like Captain Crunch and how they sort of think, you know, everybody's a suspect because you're not paranoid if they're really after you, right? Um, and so we see a lot of sort of really poignant topics, as far as like who is good and evil, what does good and evil look like in this current time period. I love that it's a period piece, honestly, and I really love that they kept it in Spanish and not in English. I think it would not have been as beautiful if it had been in English versus in Spanish, personally. So, but like all of these things are happening at the same time that this little girl is living in her little magic fairy realm and trying to figure out what the different magic around her is, and how to get out of this place she doesn't want to be in, how to rescue her mother. Like she has very few people that are kind to her in this new place, you know, which makes it even harder to get out of that fairy sort of mindset. Would you say I left anything out as far as like what most of it's about without giving away the ending so far?
I think you got the gist of it. Yeah. Um. The I think that the thing that really is important about it is that they basically the whole time this girl is being told that magic doesn't exist and that all that stuff's fake. And one thing that the movie does that's really interesting, and honestly, it's one of my least favorite things about the movie, even though I really like it. In the movie, they never definitively say whether what she saw was real, whether
Mm.
the fawn and the fairies and the pale man and all that stuff was actually it existed, or if it was just a very lonely girl with an overactive imagination trying to cope with a world that she didn't understand. And
Sure.
so to give away the ending, guys, last fucking spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
go watch it. At the end, girl straight up dies. Like she gets shot by Captain Crunch, and because that dude's fucking cold as he's cold as a block of ice that's been fucking in the middle of the Arctic for 6 years. Like he's cold. Um, and she dies, but it implies that she made it to kind of her destiny as the like princess of this fairy world, but she's dead. And so but the funny thing is that in the book it actually doesn't have that kind of distinction. In the book it is all absolutely real. And I guess in hindsight after reading the book, one thing that I guess about the movie I think is not fair to the viewer is that the movie does not tell you where the dagger came from. It does not tell you where the key came from. It does not tell you who the pale man
Mm. Yeah.
is. It does not tell you why, like, it doesn't give any emotional depth whatsoever to what the wolf is doing, Captain Crunch. It doesn't give you any of that. It's just kind of you take it at face value. And it turns out that Captain Crunch actually has a pretty deep story. And he's still fucked up and he's still an asshole, but he's also like deeply, deeply, deeply insecure and deeply disturbed by the way he was raised. And so that was one thing like after doing that. But if you're just gonna watch the movie, you're fine because it's like you see enough. But you are
So did
left
they
wondering at the
elaborate
end.
more into like the backstory of the fairy tale part of it at all in the book?
Yes. So
So,
the
like, you
way
actually get to find out more about who the fawn is and, like, all the other characters? Because that I always struggled with that. So, it's actually one of the reasons why that movie did not do so great, like, in 2006. It was kind of regarded as not a great movie, and it kinda bombed because a lot of people felt like it was an incomplete story, like, we did not
it
get
was.
a whole lot of information, and I would agree with that, and, like, I felt really kind of curious because the fawn, like, really tricked her, like, the whole time, and, like, I know they're known for that, like, in lore, but, like, he all of a sudden it's what a twist and you sacrificed yourself for an innocent and that's all we wanted you to do in the first place, and that had nothing to fucking do with any of the rest of the storyline in the movie.
Right. So
So I was always mad about that. Sorry, like I saw this when I was pregnant and I was really emotional about it then, and like that just kind of came out now. I apologize. Like
so
when I first saw it I was like pregnant with my first in the theater and I was like what.
one of the things that actually triggered the events of the entire Pan's Labyrinth situation, believe it or not even
Mm.
mentioned. Now, it could have been written retroactively, basically after the movie came out, and they went in and filled in the backstory for the novel. So do keep that in mind. But I
Sure.
don't think that's the case. I think that they had a much fuller movie planned and worked with what they had. So because a lot of times those novelizations go off
Yeah.
the script. So the original thing that caused it to happen was actually the drowning of a witch, right? It was one of the first things that caused everything to happen. And the drowning of the witch just led to this whole chain of events that caused the intermingling between she was essentially not a prophet. I guess she was a prophet in a little ways, but she was like a cunning woman, like Beth we were talking about before is what she was. And so when there was like kind of an inquisition, she got drowned, and she had directed somebody to build the labyrinth, which became a gateway to this other world. So the book never even really goes into why the fawn acts the way he does, because he's completely legit in the book. Completely legit. He exists. He is helpful. He
Mm.
is a hard person to work for. A lot of the other characters are actually his um not employees, but his kind of
Minions.
minions, yeah.
Underling.
And so but he is the real deal and he is trying to get a mission accomplished. But why he had to use the subversion and stuff and why he just seems so sneaky, that is something that even the book didn't answer because he does seem so fucking sneaky. Like he's just it's just like the whole
Yeah.
time you suspect this dude. Like you're like, there's no way. Even the woman, the rebel woman, she says like, my mom told me growing up, don't trust fawns. And that's, I mean, you're like, yeah, don't trust him. That dude cray cray. He trying to get you in there with Mitch McConnell. Okay.
I'm just saying,
Like
if you've read Chronicles of Narnia, then you know not to trust fawns, right? Like we know this.
the interesting thing is that it's called
True.
Pan's Labyrinth in the English version, but the fawn is not Pan by any stretch of the imagination. I think they did it. I think it was kind of a concession to like trying to put some like name recognition on it. Because the
Sure.
fawn is most certainly fucking not Pan. Um, which is kind of ridiculous. In Spanish, it's seriously called like the Fawn's Labyrinth. Like it is not called Pan's Labyrinth in Spanish. So,
They're just
Wow.
one
like,
thing,
here, white people, try to remember this piece of legend right here, real quick.
right? One thing that's really interesting is that so the movie is in Spanish. There is no English version, the dubbed, and that's as Beth said for the better. But one really great thing about it is the
Oh yeah.
subtitles. The subtitles are actually written by Guillermo del Toro himself. On a previous movie, he got super fucking angry at the subtitles because they were just so shit that he was like, fuck that. I'm going to go in and do this. And he sat down and wrote the subtitles. And so I think that's why a lot of the subtitles are actually, it's written very beautifully and written very well because of that reason, because he actually took that personal investment of time in order to go do it. So, word up to him for sitting down and taking care of that because you know, us American people that can't speak Spanish, it's
Yeah.
very helpful.
That, and I think it actually gets off the, there's always artist intent. Well, if the artist does the whole process, I think you could see the intent right there. Like, and he does speak English as
Right.
well, so he's bilingual. So he doesn't have to send it off to a localization team or anything. He just did it himself. So he's not going to be like, oh, they messed up that word, and every time I see it flash up on screen, I'm going to be really pissed off
Sure.
about it.
So, so one thing that I learned in my research about the film is that it had a lot of subcontext. Like, listen, guys, you know how I am with religion. I'm super harshly critical of it, and I ask for a lot of things. I ask for accountability. I ask for a lot of different things, and so like I'm ready. I'm ready to jump on that. But here's the thing. One of the contexts of the movie was that it was an anti-Catholic movie, but it was so obscured that some Catholic people actually thought it was a pro-Catholic movie. True story. And so I wanted to ask you guys. So, like for example, the scene with the pale man was an analogy actually for priests that prey on children. And so the analogy was he has this beautiful feast in front of him, but the only thing he wants to do is prey on children, right? So it was in the book. It wasn't in the movie, but the Pale Man actually was a child murderer, and he was a little bit like fucking goddamn it. Oh, Wendigo, right? Like yeah, like he started out
Oh,
human, and then like he killed so many children that he became what he is. He transformed, but so that was a direct analogy. But watching the movie, knowing that for fact, I didn't see it. Like, I just saw a really fucked up
no.
guy that looks like a turtle that was really, really fucking rude, okay? And had eyes in his
And
hands.
8 fairies. Like,
Eh,
gross.
yeah, like seriously, who even does that?
Yeah, I mean, you got ancient stories of old, older people killing, eating, and doing other terrible things to children. I mean, you got Hansel and Gretel, all of the old Grimm's brothers. They're all, I'm supposing, under 18, like Rapunzel and Little Mermaid and all them. Then you have The Witch, a movie that came out. Wait, when did The
It
Witch
did.
come out? That
Yeah,
came out after,
The Witch
didn't
is
it?
much newer than Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay, okay. I mean, but still, you have stories of witches taking little children, ancient stories. So I just thought it was just another version of some ancient being, some ancient creature, some bedtime story that in this world people
Right.
tell their kids don't eat at the table of a creepy
Well, in the universe,
slimy
like the
dude.
Sure.
Pell Man was a local legend. It was like, hey, like stay away from this
Yeah.
dude. He kills kids. So he's kind of like Freddy Krueger in a way. And so yeah,
Ooh,
no, that
yeah.
definitely I mean that fits better than the religious themes in my opinion. Like the folklore
I
theme.
would agree.
Beth?
No, I would totally agree. Like, and I see a lot of like different other story, like classic story representation too. Like the way that the little girl died is very like Hans Christian Andersen with the little match girl. Sort of like she has all this fantasy, and then once the last match goes out, or once the last trauma that she receives is inflicted, like she gets to go live in her fantasy world when she dies, right? Um, so I don't know. I would have never made that direct correlation as far as the Catholic Church. The only thing I could really even see when you said that earlier was like the fact that it does take place in this very strong Roman Catholic environment in Spain in the early 1900s, like, and seeing how like maybe the idea of like the military versus rebel forces kind of thing or something like that. But like no, otherwise the only thing I could see that would be sort of an affront to Catholicism would be the witchcraft part of it itself. Like
Right.
just intrinsically, you know, I could see how that would put people off. But no, like I would have never taken specifically that one scene as being the thing that was it, right? Like that's where our big fu to the church. Like it just didn't come off that way at all.
Even slightly, in my opinion. Even looking for it, you know.
Mm.
So I guess what that means is it's just a lesson. Remember, guys, that the director and the people who make a movie might have a certain interpretation, but really it's up to you to interpret it the way you will. And I
I
think
would
this is a
say Del
great case of
Toro's
that.
known for that too, though.
He is.
Honestly, like if you've seen any of his other movies, like I would say that he is very artistic in the way that he gets disgruntled. I would love to see Guillermo del Toro do like a King James movie, you know, and just see how he goes after that.
Yeah, but it would probably
Um
be about like the 19 it would you know what? It would probably be about like the 1930s or something. It'd be like Greasers, you know, like James Dean, like fucking rebel without a cause. And it's like, you know, he gets in a situation where he has to go out to sea and like find himself at sea. And then Guillermo del Toro's this is commentary on when King James, you know, discovered that he hated witchcraft. And it's like, what?
There's a blue
oh
filter over the
lord.
whole movie when
Oh, boy.
Hellboy shows up.
So
Dude, Guillermo del Toro is a genius. I don't care what anybody
Doug
says. That
Jones
motherfucker
play.
is a flat out genius.
Yeah.
I've watched a couple of his other movies
Doug Jones plays
recently. I
5 different
watched the
people.
new Pinocchio, which was really good, and I watched Crimson Peaks for the second or third time. I highly recommend Crimson Peaks. It's very cheesy. Totally thought it was a book. It was not. It was something that he took from some of his own personal experience in life and turned into a very strange horror movie. But it was done really well. It's got Charlie Hunnam in it from Sons of Anarchy, and it's got
Right.
Tom Hiddleston in it as like the lead character, you know,
Oh
Loki.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was so good. Like it's done really, 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 really well. And I really did think that it was a dramatization of a novelization. Like it was done like a book should read in a movie is the best way I can put it, right? But he even said like it was a lot of his own kind of twisted horror. But he is known for having this like really visually moving and very true to his own vision um articulation in the way he creates his set and his costume and how he styles his characters, the animation. Like I don't think there's a Guillermo del Toro movie or anything I've seen of his that I didn't like. I think it's actually some of my favorite tarot cards that I have like in my wish list too. is the Guillermo del Toro tarot, which is really cool because it takes characters out of his different stuff and some other abstract things and puts them into tarot decks, which is really nice.
That's kind of fucking sick. I didn't know that was a thing. Okay. I
Yeah,
wonder I
yeah,
wonder what
I want
card
it
the
so
fawn
bad.
is. Um so
Mhm.
and is so listen, if there's not a Dolce Leche card or whatever, fucking
La Fresca
Leche
Leche
Fresca.
Fresca. If
Leche.
there's
and
not a
Captain
Leche Fresca
Crunch.
card, it doesn't count. Okay, so guys, I wanted to ask you, we're going to try to keep this episode a little bit shorter, just for tech reasons, but I did want to ask you guys real quick, what was your favorite scene from the film, and overall did you like it? Like, did you think it was good? Like, like what left kind of an impression on you, if anything?
I think I was really
Hmm.
lucky in getting to see it in theater. Even watching it like on the 4K TV with like a ultra high definition, like it just doesn't do it the same justice of beauty and of capturing you into this world as seeing it on the big screen did for me. I will also say, like, I have watched the movie probably a dozen times now, even though there were holes in the plot that I seriously, even from the very first time I saw it, like, I really struggled with. Um, it's really hard not to like it. Even when you don't necessarily understand all of it, just because it's so visually moving. The scene where he slices his face open or stitches his face back up, like all of everything. There isn't a scene in the movie that isn't done to perfection from every camera angle and lighting and just all of it. The whole thing was so beautiful and you really just fall into it, like especially when you get to see it in a bigger screen format and see all of the detail that was put into creating this really inspiring sort of world that is. He shows both the ugly side of reality and the beautiful side of all of this fantasticalness, you know, in such a way that it's like poetry.
Very much so.
Hmm.
Nick?
I think I think I love the movie, but I went in with the as soon as I started seeing that it was fantasy. I love fantasy. I have so many fantasy books. That's all I have now. I'm about to get rid of all the other ones. So I went into the mindset of this is real. I didn't have questions of if she did or didn't. Like we watched the movie and Sarah goes, "So did she actually make it there?" And I was like, "Yeah, she 1000% died, and she is the princess of this world." Um, so I had no reservations about that. And then we had a cute little conversation of like, what is high fantasy, low fantasy, urban fantasy. It was fun. So we talked
Let me
about like this
break
is
this
dark
down
fantasy.
real
It was
quick.
good. Um,
No,
yeah,
like I
yeah,
respect that
yeah.
though. Like I
It was
appreciate
awesome.
that.
Yeah, yeah. We were just talking about it's like so she loved it too. So we watched it together. Um, but yeah, I love the movie. There's not a single scene that I didn't enjoy. As Beth said, it's visually stunning. It's beautiful, fantastic. Um, yeah, I like the interpretation of fairies as being little bugs at first. I
They're
was
like
like,
little
I've never seen
katydids,
a
right?
fairy
Like
be a
her little
tiny
witch
little
Oh,
bugs.
bug. Yeah,
there's
yeah,
actually there's
yeah.
actually
Until
some
she
backstory
changes
behind
it.
that. So the thing is that the fairies, what they did was they started out as bugs because that was the form that they had taken on Earth when their job, along with the fawn, was to find the princess. That's why they were on Earth. That's why they were here, and they had been searching for centuries. And so what happened was when the princess, Ophelia, when she saw him and showed her that picture of what a fairy looks like, the fairy decided that everything would go easier if she fit the picture of what Ophelia thought a fairy should look like. So it wasn't her true form; it was a form that she took in order to make herself more comforting in appearance to Ophelia. So that's what happened. The fairies were actually incredibly intelligent, and the movie kind of gets set across, but because they can't really speak English, they use a lot of like sign language and stuff like that. But yes, that is why that happened. The movie didn't really explain it. It was just kind of like a praying mantis turned into a fairy, and you're just kind of like, that was a very cool scene, but huh, you know. But that's the backstory. They did it to help her basically along her journey.
That makes sense.
Once again, might be
Yeah.
retconned. Not sure.
Sure.
I don't know. You maybe want to get the book now.
The book's
We've been doing that a
fabulous.
lot lately by watching a movie and then seeing novelizations or the book that it's based on.
Well, the Pan's Labyrinth book came a few years after the movie. Um, but
Mm.
it's fabulous. It's great. The only reason I would not recommend reading the book over watching the movie is because of how visually stunning the movie is. Right? Like when you see the fawn for the first
Yeah.
time, it's just like it's practical. You know, it's a dude actually in that
Yeah.
in that outfit, and the pale man is practical, and you're just like,
He's
whoa, you know, because movies don't do that. It's CGI.
he's also a very yeah, he's a very famous body actor. I love him. As soon as he showed up on screen, Sarah goes, "That's that body actor guy you like so much." And I was like, "Yeah, that's Doug Jones
What
right
Doug
there."
Jones?
He
Who
also
was Doug
played
Jones?
yeah, the
Was he the pale man?
he if you watch Hellboy, if you watch him, he was Pan,
Oh, he was the fawn.
or the
Okay.
Fawn. So if you watch Hellboy, he's Abe, the blue guy. And he's just in everything. If you ever
Wait,
watch a
I thought
Star
Abe was
Wars or a
Andy
Star Trek
Serkis.
movie,
He's
he's
not.
always mm-mm. No, it's Doug
Huh?
Jones. He showed up in The Guild. I don't know if you like The Guild. He's in season 5.
Because Andy Serkis
Let's
is
see.
the other like
I
ultra
don't know.
famous guy who does like the kind of body acting and stuff. Like he was, of course, Gollum is kind of what a lot of people know him for. So, um,
Yeah. Um. Yeah.
so I think maybe the big takeaway from this is that like uh there are it's interesting because there's limitations to movies and we often forget about them. You know what I mean? But there's also limitations to books and we often forget about them. And so Pan's Labyrinth is an excellent example of both. Like the limitations of both. The book does not get across how the fawn looks. It does not get across the pale man. It just doesn't. It's nothing. It's like Jurassic Park. If you read the book, it's awesome and it's my favorite book, but it does not tell you the majesty of seeing that fucking T-Rex step out for the first time. Like it just doesn't get it across. But then the movie misses out on a lot of the cool context that's in the book. So Pan's Labyrinth is great. As Beth mentioned before, it wasn't as well received as maybe probably they would have liked when it came out, but that is because it really is only half a story. The movie completely lacked. Like, why the dagger? Where did the dagger come from? How did it exist? Why does this dude keep pulling out this broken fucking watch? They devoted one line to it at the dinner party. I heard that you have a watch that your father bashed on a rock when he died, so you knew the exact time that he died. And like there's this whole backstory behind that, and like they barely glossed over it. And it's like so important to this dude's ego that his kid knows who he is, when he died, and all this stuff. And so when they killed him at the end, spoiler alert, Captain Crunch dies at the end. Um, the he's killed by the Trix Bunny actually, but the thing is that when he dies, you are cheering because he's such an asshole, and you hate him. But the reason you should be cheering is because everything he ever wanted got taken away from him in that moment, and you barely know it in the movie.
Yeah.
The significance is kind of lost in translation, and not in the Spanish to English, but just the script to movie translation. So go watch it. Enjoy the special effects, okay? Especially the fucking fawn, because I didn't say my favorite part, but when the fawn comes out and he's like, I've been known as many names. They called me Pan, they called me Dude, they called me Paul. You know, and he's like doing all the fucking weird, and he's like real cracky because he's been sitting there for so
Mm.
long, and he's like all crackly and shit. Dude, I'm sorry, that shit was top tier. I like that. It's creepy and beautiful and cool and just disconcerting, and you don't trust him automatically. And he just did a fucking like they knocked it out of the park with those effects. The girl who played Ophelia was
Mm.
absolutely fabulous. The guy who played the wolf was fabulous. He did a great job making you just hate his guts from the moment you see him. And then later on, when he gets
Yeah.
half of a Glasgow smile, it's just like, all right, fuck that guy. When he yells, he's like, get on! And his like his cheek is like hanging open. You're like, oh shit. Want to know how I got these scars? You know what I mean? Um, that
Yeah.
the woman who was helping the rebels, she kind of had like a girl boss moment, you know what I mean? And I'm into it because he was a rampant sexist, like a rampant, like the girl did not matter to him. She mattered so little to him that he basically just shot her out of hand. He's just basically like, um the mother also didn't mean anything. It was basically just she was an incubator. And you know what interested me is he went through all of this shit just to have his son. But the weird thing is like, let's be real here. If it didn't work out, like if she lost the pregnancy or something, that would be tragic and that would suck. Um, for more for the mother than for him because he's such a fucking douche. But he could knock somebody else up and
Yeah.
just have another kid, right? Like I see he went out of his way and put his life in danger in order to have a son, and so much so that he put the mother's life in danger and directly basically contributed to her death for it. Yeah, a lot of people die in this movie, guys. And they do not die prettily.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't know, man. The wolf such he's a complex character, but that's one of my beefs with the movie is they did not get across any of that complexity. He was like Voldemort. He was just like he's evil, you hate him,
Yeah.
he's gonna die at the end, guys. Just cheer when he dies, put down the popcorn and go watch something else. But there's so much complexity behind his story. And he's still an asshole and you still hate him, but you at least have a reason to, you know? In the movie, it's just like, oh, he's a
Yeah.
misogynist pig, you know? Um anyway, so
He could have been a Cersei Lannister,
right.
but it was Voldemort.
Yeah. Well, Cersei Lannister is another one that I think that the TV series didn't actually get across her story well enough personally. Um
Oh.
yeah,
Oh.
Cersei,
Wow.
she's deeply complex. Which is saying a lot for George R. R. Martin
In
because
the
George
show,
R. R.
she's
Martin
more
basically
complex
writes
than it.
women as
Yeah.
sex
Yeah.
objects. But for some reason with Cersei, he found a way to actually
True.
make it kind of make sense. Um, but with that said, guys, overall, do you recommend this movie? Should our audience who trust our
Oh.
opinions with their fucking entire heart and fucking soul, should they go see this movie? Should they spend their $3 on Amazon Prime to rent it or their $12 to buy it in standard
I-
definition?
You can get it for $8 on Vudu.
or
Ooh, competition.
that. Or here's what I'm about to do, and I already told Sarah I'm going to buy the
Ooh.
Blu-ray version of the movie because I want to watch it over and over again in beautiful, crispy images of my face. That was beautiful. Absolutely. I think you have to watch. I think you have to watch it in order to watch the rest of the
That's the
show. You
Leche
know,
Fresca edition.
every episode you have to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Enter a password every time we upload a new video related to Plan's Labber.
I would say everyone should watch it. I mean, it's really good. I mean, you know me, I watch horror movies with my kids and my kids have watched it with me a couple of different times. And as they get a little older each time and don't get bored with the subtitles, you know, they'll watch it. I would say 8 out of 10. Like there are definitely some holes in the plot that you don't get across through the movie. And if that bothers you, maybe don't watch it. Like if you can't handle not having that cohesive full story, then you know that might not be for you. But otherwise, like just to appreciate even the one time to watch it, the artistic piece that it is and how much real skill and talent went into creating these beautiful images, like you absolutely should. Like it's a piece of artistry for sure.
You know, wife wouldn't watch it with me. I
Really.
asked her to. Yeah, she had seen it before,
Hmm.
and the scene with the bottle, actually, the scene with the bottle, she just refused. She was like,
The
"I'm not
opening
watching that."
scene, she can't. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, she just like
Yeah.
body horror like really fucks with her, and so like that scene in particular like disturbed her so bad when she saw it that she just won't watch it again, which is a shame because like the rest of the movie is so worth watching. I mean, that part's worth watching because ultimately it turns out that the Captain
Yeah.
Crunch was wrong and he shouldn't have done it. He didn't give a fuck. He's basically like, oh, well, I'm gonna take the rabbit and cook it up now. These two people that I just killed for no reason. What a fucking asshat. Anyway, all right, so guys, that's Pan's Labyrinth. You should go watch it. Like, go watch it. Hey, and when you leave us a 5-star review on whatever service you're listening on, make sure that you if you find any religious subtext, let us know, because we apparently missed it. But if
Yeah.
you find it, let us know along with a 5-star review. It will not count, and it's automatically wrong if it's less than 5 stars. So, with that said, thanks for listening to this episode of Macabre Masters. You guys are fucking awesome. Be well, be real. Next week or whenever we come back, we'll be back with whatever we talk about. As always, we have not talked about it yet, so I'll let you know when the time comes, which is when it comes out. Okay, so have a good one, guys. Be well.
We love
Later.
you.
Goodbye.